Hey everyone, it's Paul from Alexander Knife Sharpener and Laser Engraving. So what I want to talk to you quickly about today is dealing with knife makers' knives as opposed to your commercial knives. So one thing I learned the hard way early on, 5 years ago or so, when I first opened the shop and I had my pricing out there, it was also a time period when there was a lot of guys getting into knife making, mostly because of Forged in Fire and shows like that. I had a lot of people that were coming in with knives that they had made in a shop, and there's like even places around here that have like shops where you can get shared time in metal shops and go in. And like I said, I have military bases around here, and apparently there's something like that near one of the military bases. And guys were just coming in with these homemade knives, and they were brutal to work on. And I very quickly, within a very short period of time, had on my pricing on my website, hey, if it's a homemade knife, I need to see it. You're going to pay an hourly rate. It's not going to be a fixed price sharpening for that knife, because quite frankly, they just take a lot of time to put a nice even bevel on to get them sharp when they're new knife makers, because they're just not at that level yet. One of the great things was, I had a guy that came to me. He's a retired Marine. His name's Jeff Moore. I've mentioned Jeff before in the past. Jeff's been making knives for a while now, and he's making really great knives. And I've got to watch his progression over time, and his handle works beautiful. The knives are great. He's got particular styles now that he likes, that he makes, and it's just been a really cool progression to watch. Not long ago, Jeff made me a knife, and one thing I like about Jeff's knives, Jeff does like themed knives, and usually for a purpose, and I think that's really cool, and that's kind of what he's into. So being that he's a retired Marine and he has a lot of military in family and friends, a lot of his knives are military themed. He knew I was a Navy guy, so he made me a Navy like color inspired handle. If you can see here, it's got anchor pins in the anchors, it's got anchor pins in the pins in this knife. And he knew I like utility knives that I work with in my shop all the time, and he made this one for me. And he didn't sharpen it because he was going to let me do my own, and he didn't even engrave it because he knew that I would want to do something with my own knife, which I still haven't gotten around to. I have a couple ideas for what I want to do on here. I think I want to put my former ships on this knife, but that's something I am going to get to. I also recently got a knife for my wife from Jeff. So this is the one I just picked out for my wife. She doesn't know it yet, but this is the one she's going to be getting. I mean, just look how beautiful this handle is. So she likes, knives that tend to be on the smaller side, and I thought she would love one of these smaller, kind of like, Jeff calls these bar knives a lot, and I thought it was kind of funny. My wife loves martinis, and I almost got him. He does have this knife here with a little martini pin on there. But I love his handle work. I love his spine work. Look at the decorative spine on there. But I've been sharpening for Jeff for a while now, and I can tell you, like, as time's gone on, it's gotten easier and easier working with him because he's bringing me better stuff all the time. So just know that. Don't just jump in right away to working with a knife maker. You definitely want to talk to them, see what their skill level is, take a look at the knife. I have refused knives that have come in from people who have told me that they are a knife maker, and then they come in and you see this knife and you're like, wow, yeah, I'm not touching this. So just know that, before you get into it, because you don't want to take on something that could be hours of work that you're not charging enough for, or make sure that they know, hey, I charge by the hour for this stuff, not by the piece. Unless they get to a point where you know that you can charge by the piece because they're now that good of a knife maker. So I just wanted to show you that, because Jeff is becoming that kind of that good of a knife maker. His knives are beautiful. They're very cool. If you are looking for a particular piece, and I would say like for someone retiring from the military or in the military, or a college knife, he's done a lot of college themed knives, or if you just have an idea of a theme or something you want to do, Jeff's your guy, because that's the stuff he loves to work on. Almost all of his knives have some purpose behind them, have a theme behind them. He will get colors that match. He will get wood colors that match the college you went to. He will get the college mascot on the pins. That's what he does. That's his thing. And he's just doing an awesome job here in Virginia on these kind of knives. So I just wanted to show you that. I'll show you one of his style knives. He's been making these for a while, and I really like these. This is his Nakiri style knife that he makes. These are beautiful. I love this. I was very much considering even getting my wife one of these because she loves a good Nakiri. The only reason I didn't is because she already has one. So I figured I would get her a knife that I thought she would use a little bit more than this, since she already has a Nakiri in her kitchen. But that's it for Jeff. That's my shout out for him. And I am going to get back to finishing up his knives here real quick. But that was my just quick point for today. Before you get into doing knife maker knives, just know those are some of the pitfalls and things that you're going to run into. Make sure you're getting compensated properly for the amount of time that you're going to spend on those knives. All right, so let's show another one of sharpening of Jeff's knives here. One thing I like to do when it's a knife maker's knife, I do like to look right down the edge facing in, because sometimes it'll be real obvious where you have some thicker areas where it might be a little too fat, a little too thin. On this one, I can see it's thinned out pretty good down here. It looks to me to be a little fat up in our tip. And we're going to set this up now to do a 17-degree angle across this entire knife. I believe we're going to see this bevel. There is a small bevel cut into here, but I think we're going to see a much bigger bevel now when we set this up for a 17-degree angle. This knife's still a little thick, so let's see here. So the first thing we got to do is put our Tormek angle setter on here. I'm going to set the angle for this knife. So the first thing we do is set the protrusion. Got the protrusion. These are all pretty close to the same size, the last few that I did there. We're at like about 15.5 here. We're going to do a 17-degree angle on this one. That's what we did on the last. Here we go. This is 17. So we're set. So now we don't have to set that again. For any of the machines we go, we're just going to take this angle guide with us and go. Now, this is 80 grit, so this is pretty aggressive. And I'm just going to give it a pull through to just check and see. And that looks good. It looks like it's pretty much still on the same alignment with the other cut there. I can just tell that it's thick. You'll get to where you can feel these things, and look at the size of our bevel. It has definitely increased. So we are still thinning that out. And to have an effectively good cutting knife, thinning is super important. And a lot of your commercial knives, they're already, they come well thinned. So if you're talking a Henkel's, a Wusthof, a Schoon, a Miyabi, these knives are very thin. So that was 7 on each side. And now I'm looking to see, is my bevel even? Is it larger in one area and less in another? And we do have kind of a wider bevel at the tip, but down here in the base of the knife, it's a little bit thinner. Okay, so I'm going to keep going because I do want to kind of even that out some. So I'm going to keep thinning this knife because I can just tell, just from the feel of it and how the grinder feels, I can still tell it's quite thick. I am seeing a burr up here. I feel a burr here. The only place I'm not is at the very, very, very base. You can see that looks a little, see how that looks a lot more even now? We got a pretty nice bevel cut there. And that looks pretty good. And it feels good. We are seeing a nice even bevel, no weird reflection, and no grind mark where it's not hitting. It's hitting that full bevel grind across the whole blade. So I am already going to be able to jump to my 400 now. Taking my angle guide off. Looks real nice. Feels good, looks good. So now we're going to go on to 1,000. This is me just pulling straight up on the paper. Feels very good. I'm just sitting, I feel there's might be one little spot here in the middle where I might have a tiny bit of burr that still needs to come off, but it's cutting great. But I'm gonna just touch it because I want it absolutely perfect. I'm just gonna hit it tiny bit on a 1x30. I am gonna pull it from its jig. Leather strap with diamond spray on it. I picked this because it just felt to me like it just needed a tiny bit. Let's see here. Alrighty. This one is done. Alright, so this was the same style knife as the last one. One of the cool things about it is I didn't have to make any adjustments. I did check it to be sure, but it was, when you have a knife maker that's making the same knife, that can save you time too when you're sharpening them. When you have a bunch that come in and they're the same and the same size, you can kind of quickly get everything set to go. This new 80 grit CBN wheel is really been awesome in cutting down the time it takes me to do things like this, like a new knife maker's knife. I shouldn't say new, but a knife maker's knife. Jeff's not, I don't consider Jeff a new knife maker anymore. And this is one, again, where I'm trying to even this knife out. So I can tell there's parts of this that are thick. So we have a thick tip. This is a little bit thinner than some of his others. This is more like a paring knife. But it definitely has a thick upper tip portion here. We got a lot of thickness going on up there. I like that better. It's giving me a much larger bevel now on that side. I'm going to do this side and try and even it out. But it even looks better. It's giving it a better look. And it's just a matter of getting it even. That's all. That's what we're looking for here. I just want to even this bevel out on each side. Yeah, and this side's still not quite there yet. And I can tell it's fat in the rear because I have a burr all the way here and then it stops. I don't have a burr here, but you also notice that that bevel on this side is not as thick as the rest of this. And that's why, because it's not completely even yet. So this is another one where I'm just going to have to put a little more pressure on this rear part of the knife until we get that evened out. And there you go. Do you see? Do you see how the bevel just evened out now? So it's even all the way. So it was real thin, and it's just because it wasn't ground. It was too thick. So it was like fat and thick, and it was giving us this angled part down here. But now that I'm starting to get it thinned out, you can see it's evening that bevel off the whole way across that knife. I used to do some of the laser engraving for Jeff, and he used to do his maker's marks the old way with the electrodes. And I kept telling him, like, dude, let me do your maker's marks. They're going to look so much better with the laser. But last year for Christmas, Jeff went and got his own laser, which I was, I thought for a little bit, maybe I'm not going to see him anymore. He's not going to need me. But he still comes to me to sharpen his knives. But he's doing his own maker's marks now with the laser, which is pretty cool. He got the regular F1, which for a small knife maker I think is perfect. It's not as fast as my Ultra, my fiber laser. If you're just a small knife maker and you just want to put your maker's mark on there or do knife engravings, and you're not having to do large batches of anything, the regular F1 with the 2-watt IR is fantastic. It's the same as I never had that particular laser. I had the Laser Pecker 4, which has exactly pretty much the same capabilities. It has a 2-watt IR infrared laser and a 10-watt blue laser. And that's what the regular F1 has. It has a 2-watt IR for metal and a 10-watt blue laser. For guys making their own knives, that's a great unit. Or I always think the S1 is a fantastic laser for that too, because you can get the a 2-watt IR module for your S1, which I have. And I've done many knife engravings with that as well. And what's the difference between, your fiber and your 2-watt IR? And some people will tell you, oh, the 2-watt IR doesn't do a deep engraving. That's just simply not true. It absolutely can do a deep engraving. It just takes longer. But, there's some advantages there too, because usually you're talking on some of these machines, you're talking a much more narrow beam. So you get a really beautiful engraving. And even though, yes, a fiber laser for metal, in my opinion, is the absolute best, it doesn't mean that a 2-watt infrared not going to get you there. It absolutely will. And one nice thing about that 2-watt IR, it's got a very small, look how beautiful this is cutting. It's got a very small beam, so you can get a really nice engraving. And that was the one thing that Jeff liked when I finally got him talked into the F1, was on a smaller knife. He used to be stuck to one size maker's mark. So now, when he's doing like a smaller knife like this paring knife, you can see, look at how perfectly detailed that is. Let me zoom in for you. Look at that. It looks great. And I'm telling you right now, that is in that knife. It always cracks me up when people are like, oh, it just marks the surface. Bull. That is not just on the surface. I can totally feel that is in the knife. Here's the difference. The only difference is if I was to do this on my fiber laser, it might take me, I would say a minute and 30 seconds, where this might take Jeff to do on a regular F1 with a 2 watt. It might take 7 or 8 minutes to get it this deep. But if you're only doing a handful of knives, if you're a custom knife maker, who cares? What's 7 minutes, for an engraving? You don't necessarily need that speed or the power, so it's not a big deal. And you can see, I think his mark looks fantastic, and now he can make it, any size. His mark regularly a lot bigger when he did the the electrolysis method. It was just one size, so the size that you would see on one of his bigger knives, you saw the same size on a smaller knife. But now he can shrink it down so it kind of goes with the knife. It matches that knife. And I think that looks great. And that is just a beautiful knife. In the description of the YouTube video, I will leave the contact information for more knives if you want to seek out Jeff's help in getting a knife made. And I will also leave a link to his Instagram where he posts a lot of pictures of the really nice knives that he makes. Have a great day, everyone.